This is episode 264 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. And now a word from our sponsor, Control and Compound.
Here's how infinite banking works in under 60 seconds. You have to save your money somewhere. Well, we think the best place to save it is inside a cash value life insurance policy. You save some money in there, it grows tax-free for the rest of your life. Then an opportunity or emergency comes along. Let's say a few years down the road, you can buy a business, buy a property, buy an income-producing asset. You leverage the infinite banking policy, borrow against your asset, take advantage of the opportunity. But your money still stays in the infinite banking policy. You're not borrowing your money, you're borrowing the insurance company's money. So your money's in the policy, it's in the opportunity, and it's providing a death benefit. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. You get to retirement, you have this massive cash value life insurance, leverage that tax-free, and you don't repay those loans. You sit on the beach and you spend that money tax-free every month. Doesn't show up on a tax return, and you leave your family a huge tax-free death benefit.
For more information, visit www.controlandcompound.com/Andrew Hines. Welcome back to the show. Today I have Seth Ferguson on, and Seth has been on this show a couple of years back. You might know Seth as the host of the multifamily conference in Toronto that happens annually. This is the largest multifamily conference that happens in Canada, and let's just say that Seth really does swing for the seats. This guy does not play small, and he has built an incredible network and incredible level of credibility with what he's done, and it's nothing short of impressive. So in this episode, Seth shared all about humble beginnings as a referee, coaching, or a referee for hockey, and then eventually let that dream go and focused on real estate full time. Notably, Seth is investing in multifamily projects in the state of Florida. These are large multifamilies with several people involved as stakeholders in these properties, and they're acquiring hundreds of units at a time. So not playing small with that either. And I think it gives him a big level of credibility to be hosting the conference that he does, where he's getting some pretty incredible guests. And I'll actually have a special link for that conference so that you can get the tickets for it. If you're thinking about attending the event, it'll be the best price they're going to offer. So Seth has provided me with that. I'll make sure that's in the show notes of this episode if that's something you're interested in. So just before we get into the episode, I want to remind you that if any of the terminology is new, make sure you check out the first 10 episodes of the show because that's really when we got into the fundamentals, and then come right up to modern episodes and dig in. And once again, if you're enjoying this show, please share it with somebody you think it could help. Now, without further ado, let's jump into the episode with Seth Ferguson. Hello and welcome to the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. I have Seth Ferguson back on the show after quite some time. It's been like 100 episodes, and last time I had you on, I was in Florida too. So this is our theme.
Oh, you're in Florida right now.
Yeah, freezing in Florida. It's not very warm right now.
Actually, I'm speaking at an event in Miami in a couple of weeks, so I might run into you. You never know.
Oh, yeah, cool, man. We'll come on over to Naples.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, cool, man. Well, let's do a little catch up for people who didn't see the last episode. Because there was a lot of good stuff given out then, and it's been so long, and I'm sure many of them haven't heard that episode. So why don't you give a high level who you are, what you do, Seth, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I'm a pretty cool dad still at this point, but in terms of work in real estate, most people know me as the guy who runs the multifamily conference, which is Canada's largest real estate investing conference. And I'm also the COO of a real estate investment firm called CPI Capital. And we acquire underperforming apartment buildings in the U.S. And we partner in those deals with our investors, and we turn those things around. So that's what we do in a nutshell.
That's so interesting. And I think we talked about that a bunch last time you were starting a fund and kind of the intricacies of working between Canada and the U.S. Are your funds all U.S. based?
Yeah. So all the deals we do are in the States. So, as Canadian investors, and that's a whole topic we can get into, but as Canadians, it's really important to make sure you're investing in something that's structured the right way so you don't end up getting double taxed, which is not something we want to do because as Canadians, we pay too much tax to begin with. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. I didn't mean to mislabel it as funds. Were you mostly doing syndications on these various different buildings?
Yeah. So we're working on our fund right now for Canadians in terms of just being the most efficient we can be in terms of getting that money across the border. But yeah, like your typical syndication deal, that's our bread and butter for sure.
Okay, yeah. And just for people who aren't familiar with that, syndication is you're just pulling people in project per project. So you might create a corporation or an LLC, and then you're basically, people are buying into that with shares or units into that LLC.
Yeah, for sure. So with syndication, the beautiful part about that is the investor has control over where their money's going. So when we present a deal to our investors, we're saying, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Investor, we have this deal under contract. This is our business plan. These are our expectations for deal performance. Would you like to invest? Yes or no? And as the investor, you can say, hey, yeah, this deal's great. This fits all the boxes I'm looking for. Or, oh no, this one doesn't quite meet what I'm looking for right now. Just let me know about the next one. So as the investor, you have a lot of say in terms of where your money goes because you're making the final decision, as opposed to a fund, which is where you invest in the fund criteria, right, and then that's spread across the fund.
Yeah, so for some people that'd be a good thing. For some people, they probably don't want that, right? They probably want the criteria, but then of course there's other people who want to micro pick which deals they're in, and that's pretty much who you've been serving so far.
Yeah, for sure, right? There's pros and cons to both. One of the pros with the fund is that you don't have to keep looking for your next deal. You find an operator you enjoy working with. Everybody's on the same page. You're comfortable with them managing your money. The fund's going to go out, acquire, and divest of multiple deals. So with a syndication, when the deal's up, you get your big fat check, but now you're like, okay, well, now where do I put my money to work? With a fund, it just keeps going and going and going.
Yeah.
So that's
it's
one of the benefits.
Way less effort, right? But
for sure.
Of course, it does require maybe a higher level of trust, obviously, in the operator. But, that's a natural progression, I would think, to go from syndication. Now you're going into funds. It just makes things easier, as those people who started with you on the syndications want to just keep rolling.
For sure. And at the end of the day, it's all about efficiency. There's pros and cons to both the syndication and the fund model, both on the operator, the sponsor side, but also on the LP side.
Okay. Yeah, and I want to dig into more of what you're doing because it's pretty crazy. Obviously, you didn't start syndicating big buildings. Like, what are we talking? Like a couple hundred units on your average building? Yeah,
our buy box is really within that 100 to 250, 300 unit deal. That's where we do most of our hunting.
Okay, so we're going to get into that in a moment, but it didn't start there for you. Where did the real estate investing journey start? I think you even posted this the other day, and it reminded me that you told me you used to be a referee.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Were you a referee in the NHL?
No. A lot of the guys I worked with ended up making it to the show. I was trying, but my window closed. But yeah, I was down in the States doing it as a full-time job, which was pretty cool, living out of a suitcase. I came back to Ontario when I realized I needed a real job. I got my real estate license to start selling houses because I thought at the time, selling real estate agents could set their own schedule, very loosey-goosey. Little did I know that real estate agents actually work a lot. So I kept doing the hockey for another 10 years, something like that. And I finally packed it in and became washed up when my son was born. So
yeah, you can't really travel all over the place with a little one, unfortunately, or not very easily.
No. I still remember I was driving home from Saginaw, Michigan. The Saginaw Spirit are an OHL team, and my son had just been born. And I was like, what am I doing? Because it was like 1:30 in the morning, something like that. I was like, this is not good anymore. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. So had you invested in real estate at that time?
Oh, yeah. That was much later on. The main way I got into real estate investing with the single family home stuff was I realized I was making pretty good money selling houses. And as a young guy, I also had some pretty stupid expenses. So I had the nice car expense. I had this 4-bedroom house I was living in at the time all by myself. It was stupid to do. So all these commissions would come in, but it would go out just as fast to serve all these expenses. And I realized that I needed to start investing in something so I would have something left over. And that's where I started learning more about what goes into acquiring single family homes. I think the first book I read was Don Campbell's book, The Acre System. And
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty good introduction to residential real estate investing for a lot of people. And it kind of spiraled from there.
Nice. And like time frame wise, like when did you buy your first property?
Oh, man, how old was I? I was late 20s.
Okay.
Yeah, I think maybe.
You're not that old now, though. What? So
Well,
5 years ago?
No, see these gray hairs? No, I am. How old am I now? I'm 37 now. Yeah,
Oh,
so
okay.
it's been some time.
Same, but I got you beat on the grays, man.
Now when my beard comes out, it's all white now. I look like
Yeah.
Santa Claus.
Yeah, that's the hard part about aging, but not to digress here. Okay,
Yeah.
so you've been in it for about 10 years buying properties. It's just I really wanted to draw out the change because people don't start hosting massive conferences and investing in syndications in the US. There's a progression there. There's logical steps and realizations along the way. What were some of the key milestones where it was like, okay, it's time to play bigger?
Yeah, so I blame my son because when he was born, that was the game changer. I knew that I'd made more money owning real estate than I did selling real estate. So the investment income or the investment profits were a lot greater. I just realized that the vehicle I was investing in, the actual asset class, was the wrong type. Because when my son came along, I reassessed all my goals, and now I'm a dad, so I want to go out and just crush it. And I realized I would have to own 1,000 houses. And that's not scalable. I can't imagine dealing with 1,000 individual properties with 1,000 roofs, 1,000 different tax bills, all that kind of stuff. So I started looking at retail, industrial, office, and multifamily made a whole lot of sense to me. So that's really where I ended up. And I started educating myself about the multifamily side. So that was the first big, I guess, game-changing shift. The second one came a little soon after that, where I was introduced to the real world of real estate. And what I mean by that is before, I always thought that you had to save up on your own, put your own money into the deals, and you just did it slowly, like one by one. You acquire property, you save up, you refinance, and you do the next one. I didn't realize how much money was out there looking for capital. So I met a gentleman who invited me to this real estate event in Philadelphia. And at the time, I maxed out my credit card to get there. And it was kind of funny because I was out to dinner with all these, wealthy real estate investors, and I didn't even have money really to pay for food. Like I was throwing like $20 down on the table when everybody's dropping hundreds. But I got in the room, and these were people who were syndicating deals. They were doing funds. These people had raised millions of dollars, and I was a deer in the headlights. I had no idea this world of real estate existed. And that's when I really started to understand what the real estate game is all about. Because before I was kind of like, think of a hill. When you're at the bottom of the hill, you don't see what's on the other side. I was just starting my trek up. But once I got in that room for, I think it was 4 days, and I started learning about how these people were doing deals, now I was at the top of the hill and I could see everything below me. And I really understood how the game's played. And that was a huge shift in terms of how I looked at real estate.
How many years ago would that have been?
Oh, that was probably 5, 6 years ago. So
Okay.
relatively soon. Well, maybe 5 years ago. Yeah.
Okay. So you went to that event. That was a US based event, I'm guessing?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was in Philly. Yeah.
Philly, okay. And that's obviously a big change. So from there, what's the next step though? Because did you go out and start looking at big buildings, or were you kind of a bird on the shoulder, looking over somebody's shoulder on deals they were doing?
Yeah, for sure. So at that time, I was going through the worst time. I basically lost everything at that point. So I was smack dab in the middle of a major life reset. So yeah. So what I focused on at the start was basically educating myself on, okay, I know this is how the game is played, but like, I don't know how to execute yet. So I started talking with a lot of pretty successful people, understanding how they approach deals, all that kind of stuff. And then that kind of gave me the momentum in terms of positioning myself in terms of, hey, how do I become a person where somebody actually wants to invest capital with me? And I think that's the step a lot of people miss. They just assume, okay, well, people should give me money so I can place them in deals. Well, that's not the way it works. So you have to be somebody where people want to invest money with you. So how do you become that type of person where people feel comfortable? They'll even seek you out and say, hey, listen, you are somebody who I trust with money. Like, what can you do to help me out, kind of thing.
Yeah, so you started down that journey of becoming that person. I think that that's a critical step because It's not just for them, not just so you can raise the money, but it's so that you can, if you get the money, you'll actually be responsible with it and do good with it.
Yeah, 100%, right? Because we all know of situations where people start raising money and they have no business being a steward of somebody else's capital, right?
Yeah, I hate hearing those stories because as much as we can all hear stories, people come on this podcast or whatever, and everybody can, for the most part, tell a good story. It's like, but we don't get to see the inner workings, right? And you don't get to see how they manage. And yeah, unfortunately, that does happen, and we've been hearing about it more lately. Yeah. People who've been out there and borrowing money. So obviously, you got to be responsible with that. Work with people who've proven they know what they're doing and are having success. So for you in that progression, how did you become that person? What were you doing to become that person?
Oh man, I think the best thing I ever did was I started a podcast. So honestly, because that podcast has morphed into basically everything we're doing now. On the podcast, number one, I was able to talk with people and kind of see how they got started, how they think about things. And that was a realization I had too, where, after doing 450 episodes, it's like, oh, there's some commonalities amongst all the most successful people. So that's when you start understanding the macro types of frameworks that apply with real estate investing. So that was huge. But also I learned how to ask questions. I learned how to talk with people. And that skill set is so valuable when you're having investor conversations. You have to be able to 100%. Ask quality conversations in discovery. You have to be able to transition into the pitch part. But also that podcast got me comfortable enough to do a TV show, and that TV show and the podcast got me comfortable enough to launch the conference, and it just kind of snowballed from there. So I would not be doing what I'm doing now if I hadn't launched that podcast.
Interesting. I didn't know about the podcast. I knew about the TV show. You still do the TV show?
No, we shut that down because it was, it was more of a local type of audience. And right now we're pretty much national/international. So it just didn't have the reach we wanted.
Yeah, that is a little bit of a tricky thing. Yeah, because you were Burlington based pretty much with that, right?
Yeah. So we were like, it was on demand. So you could watch it in Ontario. Like anybody in the province could watch it. But, in terms of our messaging and the stuff we're doing with the conference, it's that international audience. Yeah. So it just didn't tick all the boxes there. So we shut that down. Plus, it was pretty time intensive as well. And, even though we would do 3 or 4 episodes in a day, I can't afford to lose a day of working for that smaller audience. Right. Yeah.
No, I know what you mean completely. And sometimes I do struggle with the podcast because this is a pretty big production to do. Like there's a lot of work that goes into it. There's a lot of cost that goes into it. And what I love most about it is the people who it's connected me with and the stories 100%. And the knowledge. Like, just like you said, like I have people on and I would learn a strategy. I would take pieces from that and I would apply it to my business. It's improved who I am as an investor. So that part I'm grateful for, but it's a lot of work too.
It is. And it's like anything, you have to do the cost benefits. It's like, hey, can I bang out 4 meetings with my team and help coach my team that then can give me leverage to get something? Or do I speak to this smaller audience of people? Well, and that's where you have to weigh that, right? And right now, with everything we're doing, it's all about team. So, hey, like, can I run a sales meeting and do coaching with the team? That will then help them, get the message out even more, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm wondering if maybe like podcasts are passe, like I don't know. It feels like in the post everything went to shit era that podcasts are not nearly as popular for real estate. Like people are more like into they want to know economics. They want to know macroeconomics so they can get into the fear porn or the hope porn. But
I love it. I haven't heard that before. That's awesome.
So I don't know. That's just my take on it, because my podcast used to grow like crazy, and it's been pretty stagnant since everything kind of went that way.
Yeah, it's for sure there's seasonality in terms of not, the spring, summer, fall type of stuff, but in terms of the macro kind of interest people have. I don't think podcasts are passe. We're actually relaunching my podcast in a different format now after a couple of years hiatus, just because we feel that's going to give us a more international reach rather than that TV show.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I don't think podcasts are passe. I think in terms of expectations of quality and the niches. So the mistake I think I made was I was too niche. So I kept it very real estate focused with the podcast. And I honestly, after I think we did over 450 episodes total.
Dude, that's insane.
I got so bored with it because it was, people liked it. Like we had good listener, like a pretty decent audience, but I was so bored. So now with the revamped podcast, I've learned so much in terms of marketing, scaling teams, all that kind of stuff. So now we're making it a little bit more broad.
Like entrepreneurship.
So I can explore. Yes, still we have real estate, raising capital, but I want to explore people doing really cool shit in terms of building out sales teams and all that kind of stuff, because that's what interests me, right?
Yeah, that's super cool. And I feel similar. Like, I mean, for me, like we were talking about burrs on duplexes and duplex conversions. And it got to a point where I'm like, I can't talk about this anymore. Like, we have to go bigger, which is why we end up talking about people syndicating deals and starting funds and kind of doing different things. And I don't feel like by any means I've explored every topic within it. Like, we can keep it fresh. But there will come a point, and there certainly are times where I just want to talk about cool entrepreneurial ideas, which we'll still do. I guess the rule with this podcast is, and always has been, you got to at least own a property or have at least invested in real estate. You got to be an investor of real estate, but then we'll talk about whatever, which is the way this goes. So I agree with you about the niche thing, but it's hard sometimes if you go out of your niche too far, that, then who do you serve? He who serves everyone serves no one, right?
100%. Yep, it's a fine balance.
You need to find balance, but for sure. Then you got your Joe Rogan examples, and I had people throw that at me back when I started my podcast. Oh, just do a general podcast like Joe Rogan. I'm like, who's going to listen to some random guy they never heard of? Joe Rogan had established credibility before he started.
Yeah, 100%. Fear Factor, his comedy.
Fear Factor, comedy. Stuff. Yeah, exactly.
UFC. So,
anyway, so what's the podcast called? What's yours called so people can find it?
Yeah, we're rebranding it as the Cool Shit Podcast. So basically, I just want to talk with people doing cool shit in business and pushing the boundaries in their space. And that gives us so much leeway in terms of diving into sales systems, lead acquisition, just vision kind of stuff, and also investing as well.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That sounds like something I want to listen to. So just keep me posted on that, man.
Okay, sure. Yeah, we're just in the middle of doing the first batch of episodes. So
nice. Is it like interview in person, or is it mostly you? Like, how are you doing it?
Yeah, we're really trying to get the in-person component, because I did everything before on Zoom and it got old. And I find in person there's a better feel in terms of the conversation. But that also does limit, like, I can't fly across the country just to record a podcast. We're not there yet. So it does limit our guests, our ability to do, get guests in and stuff like that. But I think we've got more than enough talent in the pipeline for now.
We sure do. Like, I mean, I do 95% in person, and then that 5%, like right now, because I'm away, we'll be doing Zoom episodes. We were originally going to do, in studio, because we're both in Burlington. There's no reason for us not to, other than I'm in Florida right now. But, and I didn't want to wait on this. Like, I know you got your conference coming up, and I wanted to talk about that because I'm sure plenty of my audience is going to want to go there, check out your conference. But we're still in the story. We're still in talking about you. So the podcast is coming back around. I had no idea you hosted one before, but it's a funny coincidence that I feel the same way. The podcast like really started everything. I was already established before, but it just like it opened doors, and I'm really really grateful for that. So okay, you were scaling up. And when did you pull the trigger on the first syndication? Yeah, I know, and it was probably similar time frame to the multifamily conference, wasn't it? Or you slightly before that, I would guess.
No, it was before. Yeah. So the way I did that was through a co-GP relationship. So I got on board with an experienced operator, got on that GP team, and that was my first deal on the syndication side. Because like if you're looking to do, let's say, a 200 unit building, whatever it is, and you're coming in fresh, like you don't know the system, like the theory, but you haven't applied it yet. And I use the example of, let's say, Google, right? People will go work at Google. They'll learn their systems, then they'll go out and launch their startup. It's the same kind of thing. Like you want to get your feet wet. It gives you a little bit of a track record. You're able to see how people do it. You'll find things you like about how they operate, what you don't like, and then you put your own spin on it. So co-GP was a great way to get involved in the first syndication for 100%.
And how did you negotiate your way into that? Because a lot of people would want to do what you just did, and they would do it for free, but would still be rejected because they would just be a burden. Like they wouldn't know enough to add value. Well, so how did you do it?
Well, okay. This is like a whole like podcast episode in itself, because I can tell you, because of what we do with the conference and everything, we get pitched on a daily basis from people. And I think it's so easy to see where people just come at it through the frame of, hey, I want this from you. It's so easy to see that. So if you're pitching anybody, whether you want to participate in a future deal or whatever, it's like, hey, what can you give me? But you have to flip it around, and you actually have to give it some thought. So for instance, if you have a deal and I want to co-GP with you, I'm not going to be like, hey, listen, like, what are you doing with co-GPs? Or, hey, what kind of splits are you offering your co-GPs? Like, that's not the question to ask. No. The question to ask is, hey, Andrew, I heard you just got this deal under contract. I was kind of noticing, like, I was looking at your team. It doesn't really seem like you have somebody dedicated to your investor funnels for your cold leads. I was kind of giving it some thought, like, and this is something I have a lot of experience in. Do you mind having a 15-minute conversation about how I can help you set that up? Yeah. Totally different conversation. I've given it some thought. I've actually done some research. I found a place where I can add value, and now I'm giving my pitch, right? Like very different way to approach it. And I have to say, like, with our conference, it's just, there's so much junk that comes our way just because people are just taking the wrong approach with it.
Oh yeah, like, I mean, I'm sure you got it too with the podcast. I get people reaching out to me daily telling me how I can optimize my YouTube channel for keywords and how and pitching me on guests for the podcast. And hey, I listened to one episode of your podcast and I think this guest would be great. And,
which they never even listened to. It's copied and pasted. Like it's just ridiculous.
They're like, I specifically liked this episode, and it just happens to be the most recent episode.
And we can even talk about cold outreach in terms of stuff, right? Like that's just really shitty cold outreach.
It is, because the only ones that really catch me, and this is why I don't do virtual episodes, because I get booking agents going after me constantly, pitching people, and they get paid to place them. So they don't know me, and it's just a blind game. And a couple of times I found really great guests through that. But the ones that are most likely to stand out to me actually either work for the company, like of the person that they're trying to place, and they know them intimately well, and they pitch me on why they fit on my podcast and would be a value to my audience. Now they all say they know why their guest would be a value to my audience, but it's like, just, I don't know, it never really grabs me. It feels very insincere, and I can tell they put no time into it. But when I get the vibe that they put some time into it, now I'm listening.
100%. What's that book called? It's not on the shelf. Oh, I forget the title of it. So if somebody's looking to improve their cold outreach, it was written by the guy who ran the Salesforce outbound team. It was a groundbreaking book for us. But just look up the guy who ran Salesforce, and he has a book.
I'll be interested in that too, man.
Yeah, you know what? Here it is. Here. Predictable revenue.
Okay, predictable revenue. So summarize the book for me and why it would be a value for my audience.
Yeah, so basically, predictable revenue. The author is Aaron Ross, if anybody's wondering. When he took over the Salesforce sales team, they were trying to expand into the market, and they needed to do a lot of active outreach to companies because nobody knew who Salesforce was. So they had to pick up the phone or send emails and get appointments and in the door with all these accounts. So he basically outlines exactly how they did it in terms of the types of messaging that worked for cold outreach. Like, you can't just spam like those podcast people. You can't just spam one templated message. And they actually found the more effort you put into personalizing an email, the better results you're going to get. So yeah, some people are like, oh, well, I send 1,000 emails a day. Yeah, but they're all shit. If you only sent 100 emails a day, but took a lot of effort, your response rate will go through the roof. And it goes into building out SDR or BDR teams for cold outreach, and it kind of scales from there. So it's really a sales team prospecting type of book. But for cold outreach, like this had a big impact, and it's actually had an impact on a lot of major companies, because these guys were really the forefront of separating in the sales process your prospecting component and your closing or sales component. So before, most people would have the salesperson, they'd reach out, prospect, and then they would close themselves. What Aaron Ross did was he separated the prospecting. So you have people just focus on outbound, and then they qualify and then send the person up the food chain to the closer. And that just makes everybody more efficient, more specialized, and you have different KPIs there. So it's just a better way of doing things. So it's a classic book at this point, but I definitely recommend it for sure.
Interesting. I hope they have an Audible version.
I guarantee you they do.
Okay. Yeah, like I've been actually nerding out on some great books lately, and that sounds like a great one to add into the mix. One of the there was a key point that I was going to make here about a distinction. Oh, yes, people working for money or education. And I think there's not enough people willing to work for education. And pitching on, like, if you're trying to go after, if you want to scale, you want to go to funds, you want to go, build storage developments or whatever. If you've never done that, it'd be insane to try and do it entirely on your own. It's like a surgeon that's going into their first surgery, but they never apprenticed under another surgeon. Like no one wants to be the operation patient.
No,
like it's never going to be that way. You're going to be the second hand, and then once you've got your feet, under you, then you can be the lead hand.
Oh, 100%. Like, if I could go back in time in a magic time machine, I would do things so much differently. Number one, if I decided I wanted to sell real estate again, I wouldn't start out from scratch. I would find the very best agent in the marketplace and work with them on their team, learn their systems, and branch out. But in the best case scenario, go back in time, I would start working in private equity. I would find the market leader because they figured it out. And as a new person, you're probably going to raise capital. Like that's the best thing to do. You're in that sales role. You're going to have all that company's track record behind you. So it's going to make your pitches a whole lot easier and removes the pressure of you being new. You're going to have all this track record. And then when you decide a couple of years later, just go out on your own, you have all the connections. You can say you participated in X billions of dollars. You've raised X amount of money. Like, hey, yeah, I spent 3 years working at X, Y, and Z company. Instant credibility. So that's where I think, looking at some people who have done it really well from the start, they all have done something like that. Hey, I've gained a whole lot of credibility. I've built the track record. Now you start going out on your own. Like, if I could replay my life for the past 10 years, that's exactly what I would do.
That's interesting that you say that, because I thought about that. I used to think, okay, what would I have done differently? I would have, gone and worked for the absolute best, and who cares what the split is? Who cares what I make? Just go work for the best, and one day I'll be there. One day I'll be able to do it on my own.
Yeah, you're basically building your resume at that point, and most importantly, you're learning the system, because that company, that top producer, has already figured it out. They know exactly how to do it, what to put, like all that kind of stuff. You're basically getting the blueprint of success. That's what you're doing, and you're getting paid to learn it, right?
Oh yeah, like 100%. And I always just had this feeling like I couldn't really be an employee. I didn't feel like I'd be a good one. But in hindsight, if I had been doing something that I could absolutely see the path, like I could see why that would work, would have been a no-brainer.
Yeah, for sure.
I just wasn't very good at getting jobs. That's why I had to become an entrepreneur. But you're speaking to a professional wheel creator. I've been inventing the wheel my entire career. So I'm learning from past mistakes now, and I'm just purely like, let's go after people who have expertise. Let's synthesize ideas, multiple people who know what they're doing, and let's bring those together and push through.
Yeah, but in saying that though, hindsight's always 20/20, and it's so easy for me to say that now because now I've got some gray hair. But part of the reason why you and I are doing what we're doing is because we had that mentality of, hey, like, let's just do it.
Let's go try
So
it.
So it's kind of hard to say, but yeah, like people ask me all the time, like they'll message me on Instagram or whatever, or come up to me at events, and I kind of give them the same thing. If they're younger, I'm like, go find the best, learn what they do, and then put your own spin on it and just go crush it.
Exactly. You got to have the nuance. Another thing I wanted to go back to, just with what you said, like getting out and being and delivering quality, like outreach with quality. Because now we're in an age where you can skip trace lists of 10,000 people and text them, put them on automated campaigns for emails and text. But if you just do that, they're just gonna like hate you and say F off, stop emailing me.
Yeah. Well, there's two different approaches, right? And both can work. You can do the spray and pray approach where you're working on volume, or you can kind of throw spears, and that's kind of an Aaron Ross-ism from the book. And we've had experience in both with some different teams. We've tried the volume play, and does it work? Yes. Is it? Do you have a lot higher churn? Like you're just volume all the time. We've really shifted our approach to that more spear approach where we know exactly who we're going after, and we will take the time and the effort to make sure that outreach is quality, to make sure we get in front of them.
Yeah.
And I think there we can be a little, the quality's higher, our appointment rates are higher, our closing rates higher. I think it's better for the sales rep because their confidence goes up. And it's just a more pleasant, and we have instead of having 10,000 people we're dialing, maybe it's 1,000 people on our list. And it's just I find a better way of doing things. So it's like, hey, if you're a company, whatever it is, let's say you're a real estate investor, to use a real estate example, and you know that you really want this specific type of asset. Instead of sending millions of emails or just blasting direct mail across the neighborhood, well, do an extra bit of work, find the 50 asset owners in that marketplace who own exactly what you want, and go after those people in a very targeted, personalized way, right? And like you're going to be way more qualified on the phone because you know exactly the type of asset they have. Your conversations will be better. You'll be able to tailor your pitch specifically to that type of person. But if you're going volume, you can't do that. Like you have to be more general. And does it work? Yes, but I would rather have specialists at work, right?
It works up to a point until you hit a saturation point with enough other people doing the same thing, and then they get numb to it. And once they get numb to it, then now everybody has to rethink their approach. Yeah,
you have to find a new hook, like a new angle on it, for sure. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so when you're talking about this, you're talking about the buildings that you're going after?
Oh, well, this applies to everything. Not only to the acquisition on the real estate side, but also our sales side in terms of our sponsorship team with the conference. We did high volume, then we did targeted. We've done everything. I can speak to the real estate investing experience, also to like the more business kind of systems.
Well, let's take a moment and just talk about what you're doing for the acquisitions, what type of buildings. You said 100 to 250. What states are you going after? If there's key cities, just, a quick elevator pitch on how you approach all that.
Yeah, for sure. So what we're going after where you are right now. So we're putting a lot of effort into Florida, the Tampa market, St. Petersburg, markets surrounding those areas. And we're fortunate, we have a gentleman named Paul Hopkins. He's our acquisitions director. So that's his full-time job. To
just outreach. So he's just laser focusing and contacting sellers in that niche.
Yeah, well, because, going back to the specialization, that's, you build a team, you have specialists involved, and that way you get really, really good at one thing. So his job is to put deals into our funnel, underwrite them, and source opportunities, and then we get those under contract.
Okay, so he's doing the outreach and the underwriting.
100%. Yep.
Okay, cool. So sales and analytics mixed. That's good. That's a good match.
Yeah, and now eventually, as the team matures, because we're building out the business, that's going to separate. So we'll have
you're going to two different jobs. So he's wearing both hats, but doesn't need to be that way.
Yep, 100%.
Okay, so why Southwest Florida? Is there? I mean, it can't be the cap rate. I mean, the cap rates aren't bad, but there are definitely higher cap rates elsewhere.
Oh yeah, but we don't buy on cap rate. Any professional investor won't buy based on the cap rate. That's almost irrelevant in the conversation. In terms of why we're focused on Florida, we feel there's a lot of runway left in that market, and we're talking 30 to 50 year horizon there. Mm-hmm. A lot of jobs created. And then we get into government policy. We get into the nicer weather too. So who wants to deal with snow in Edmonton? When you can have a nice pool that's open all year round. So one of the things we really look for is the drivers that play in the market, what's really pushing that growth. And we've seen this, well, it's no secret to you, but the two coasts are in trouble right now in the US. Government policy, affordability, all that kind of all those things at play, and people are moving to where the jobs are. And Florida, we feel, is a strong market for not only the short term, but also the long term.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of, people that argue on the other side, well, it'll be underwater, or the hurricanes, or the insurance pricing and all that, which, I mean, to be fair, yeah, the hurricane obviously hit a lot of people pretty good. How are you kind of managing that objection? And then what are the industries that you see opening up employment here? Yeah,
well, speaking of insurance, like that for sure, that's something we have to get around, because insurance rates have tripled. So we have a couple different ways that we can, the strategies that we use to make sure that we can enjoy some lower insurance rates, which is a benefit because that makes us more competitive come offer time. Also, when we walk deals, we bring our insurance guy with us. So we're getting, instead of just walking the deal and going back to insurance, we bring the insurance guy there on site, and we're getting real-time feedback on what they think. We're always looking, hey, is this in a floodplain? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Right?
In Florida, odds are it is.
Yeah. Well, yes and no, right?
100-year floodplain, it could be the 500-year. And that's still very, very workable. You should be able to build in that. You should be able to operate in that.
Oh, 100%, right? So, we're asking all those questions when we're walking properties. We're doing our acquisitions director is doing that research before we even walk these properties. And it all comes down to the business plan, with what we feel we can achieve in terms of rent premiums and the value add in terms of the asset. Based on where the property is today and where we see insurance rates going and all those types of things, can we hit our targets? If the answer is yes, we pursue it. If the answer is no, it's okay. There's always another deal.
So when you say you're not focused on cap rate, I'm guessing that's because you have some sort of a value add strategy. It's not about the rents going in. It's about what your plan is.
For sure. You always need, we use the two value levers. You got physical improvements and operational efficiencies. You're pulling one or both of those to drive the value of the asset. And so with cap rate, all the time, and generally I'm going to make a general statement here, but when we hear people saying, oh, I only buy in an 8 cap rate, those are generally not the more sophisticated investors.
Agree.
Who say that, right? Like the smartest people I know who own billions of dollars of real estate, they don't really give a shit about cap rate. Like that's not,
because it doesn't allow for the nuance, right? And of course, it doesn't allow for the improvement plan. If you're the type of investor that only buys stabilized, optimized assets, then maybe you could say, okay, cap rate is the primary focus. Yeah, but otherwise, not really.
Yeah, but even then, though, like let's say you're doing a core or a core plus type of play where you're acquiring a premium asset with very little work or no work needed whatsoever. You're really focused on the market drivers there and the long-term appreciation of the play. the cap rate's still pretty much, I would argue, irrelevant at that point, because with the core type of asset, you're buying in a premium location in a major metro, and you're getting the very best building.
Yeah.
Like the cap rate's irrelevant because you're making your money on the 10-year, 20-year horizon there on that deal, right? So,
well, tell me about that. Tell me about what you see, like what you like about Florida. What do you see coming that's really, got you excited and wanting to, pursue that market?
Oh, for sure. Well, you just look at, speaking as a Canadian, I know you have listeners on both sides of the border, but as a Canadian, like, there are so many people who I know personally who have packed up their life and moved to Florida.
Yep.
So many people, and that's just within my small little circle. When you start looking at other circles, it's a bit of a migration to Florida right now, and there's a number of reasons for that. Policy for one is a major driver of that, and just in terms of job creation numbers, the markets we're looking to get into, for instance, like Tampa, we see a lot of growth potential there. Like, it's
like,
just
are there new industries coming to Tampa? Because this is one of those things where I've never been able to get like clear, hey, this is happening in Florida. Like, I know just with more people, you're going to have more jobs because the jobs service the people.
For sure. Well, you look at, most of the major metros now, like, we have pretty diverse economies that operating there. It's not like anymore, even if we look at the central Canada, before you looked at Edmonton and Calgary, it was oil and gas. Now you have tech in there. You have, like, it's pretty diverse. So is there a new, like, major industry that's coming into that market that nobody's ever seen before? No. Are a lot of young workers in the prime working years of their life moving to that market? 100%. And what's going to drive that economy?
Yeah. And that's going to make companies make the decision to go there. Hey, we've got the population that can staff this. Like, we can attract people here. And I think a lot of employers are going to look at Florida and say, we can attract people here.
Oh,
people want to come here. It's like Burlington versus Toronto. If you're trying to hire people to work like white collar jobs in Burlington, you'd have to pay a premium because, or you'd have to take second tier potentially over what the first tier, because they all want to be in downtown Toronto because that's the desirable place, right? So I think there's a lot of, you kind of woo people with, hey, it's Florida.
Yeah, you get lots of young couples moving in, newly married, newly engaged, whatever, long-term relationship, or a couple with a child. Like, those are your prime working years, like that late 20s, early 30s. Like that's where companies can really grow. And people are moving to where the jobs are. It's no secret. That's why people are leaving California. Number one, the affordability is ridiculous. Government policy isn't fixing any issues. Like, people need jobs and they need affordable living.
Yep. Yeah. And in Florida still is very relatively affordable, 100%. Very much so over like California, and New York City. Like, New York State's cheap, but yeah, it's cheap. Like, you can still, especially considered, like, even compared to Ontario, like, you can still get like a brand new construction 4-bed, 3-bath house for, under $600,000. I know, because I just sold one not long ago. So it's definitely a place where, like, relatively you can live a better life, assuming if you could keep your, Toronto-based income and move down here, your dollar goes further, even after the exchange.
Yeah, 100%. And when we look at multifamily now, depending on the market and stuff like that, but for a Class B type of asset, you could be in that 120 to 140 range per unit for a Class B asset. Now, again, depending on the market, like that's not bad at all. Like, that's a good range to be in, right?
Like, you don't need to go jack the rents or anything to make those numbers work. It should work reasonably.
Obviously, raising the rents is going to be part of the business plan for sure.
Of course, but right. You don't need to do it to the level you'd need to do it in, say, Ontario to make your numbers make sense.
Well, yeah. So rent control is a whole different issue, right? Because that's going to slow you down, because you're basically waiting for unit churn at that point.
Yeah.
So a 5-year business plan turns into a 10-year business plan at that point, right?
So in Florida, is it assumed, like, once the lease runs out, that you're just month to month?
Yeah. So in terms of, like, how we underwrite, and this will kind of give you a breakdown of like how we look at deals and everything. Like, we make very very conservative assumptions based on rent increase itself. But what we're doing is we're like, let's say we have a $250 premium that we think we can achieve once we do X, Y, and Z renovations. Like, we're not banking on all of that coming in year one. Like that's ridiculous. Like, it never happens that way. You're not going to acquire an asset and just be like, oh, Mr. and Mrs. Renter, we've just acquired the asset. Now your rent's increased by $250. Like, that's insane. So you have to spread that out over the next couple of years, because there's a couple different things you can do. Number one, you can go to an existing tenant and say, hey, listen, right now you're living in a basic or vanilla unit. We can actually come in and add some new countertops for you. We can add some new flooring, like some lipstick stuff, and in exchange for that, we'll charge you this amount. That gives you a head start on the turn that you're going to do anyway, but it also allows you to like get a premium already and help start driving that NOI without pissing the person off and causing issues in terms of, like, because if you have good tenants, like, why would you scare them away? It's a customer service type of thing at that point. So no, like it's not like you're going in on day one and just jacking the rent like $200. Like, nobody's doing
But that wouldn't make sense though, because the market already normalizes because there is no rent control. So units are just priced appropriately.
100%, right? So, when we're looking at premiums, like, knowing your comps is so important. So you have to know, hey, these three surrounding properties, they're achieving this type of rent premium with these types of amenities. This is a vintage. This is the size. This is all the kind of stuff they offer. Now, how does our property stack up against this? And that's the art of underwriting and just understanding, okay, well, this is how we can fit into the market and bring something unique.
Very cool. Okay, so I want to shift gears because there's so much we could talk about, but we're limited on this time. Yeah. So talk to me about the conference, just, high level. Obviously, that's a huge undertaking. We were talking about this when we were at the simulator about a month ago, and you were telling me some of the numbers, and, you're dealing with big numbers, a lot of people, and a lot of balls in the air, so to speak. Tell me about it.
Yeah. Yes. Well, we are the country's largest real estate investing conference, which is pretty crazy to say. But yeah, we bring in a lot of people. So we're May 24th to 26th in Toronto. This year we have Jordan Belfort coming. I'm excited about that. He's running a 2-hour workshop for our VIP ticket tier on how to improve their capital raising conversations. So we were talking about raising money. Like, how do you have better conversations and improve your closing rate for investors? I think that's really, really cool. Then we've got Robert Herjavec from Shark Tank coming in. Kevin O'Leary was with us our first year. He was excellent. So we're bringing Robert in this year. And then we have a third mystery speaker. The ladies are going to really enjoy this one. I can't say that name. But yeah, like, we are the event to go to if you're looking to raise more capital, find more deals. We had people doing deals at the conference. We had people finding investors. Like, this is where the multifamily space comes to meet.
Yeah, it's super exciting. And like, you've got, so like, this is a full-time job putting this on, right? On an annual basis. Like, your work work starts the day after the last conference.
No, our work starts 14 months before the conference. So before we've actually fulfilled the one event, we're already planning the next year's event.
You've already booked the space. You've already done all that.
It's like, we have a full-time team that literally works on this thing all year round. It's ridiculous.
Man, if you had to pull it all together and just like give one piece of advice for people who want to kind of take the step from where they're at to go far beyond what they ever thought they could, what would you say?
Do I have to be politically correct, or can I just say, like, have some balls and just do it? Like really, with all the crazy stuff, if I would have thought about it and hum and hawed and thought about everything that would go wrong, there's no way I would be doing what I'm doing now. Like, I had the idea of running the conference, I made the phone call, and I got things in motion, and I figured it out as I went. Because like, the thing is, if you hum and haw, you'll probably dip one toe in. And if you dip one toe in, you're not fully committed. You have to burn the boats, cut the cord, whatever metaphor you want to use. Cut the cord, dive in head first, and you'll figure it out, because you have no other option. So that's kind of
So with this one, you knew Erwin, who had hosted one big conference.
Yeah, for sure.
So I guess you could ask him some questions, but other than that, you were just doing it, inventing the wheel yourself.
Yeah. So Erwin was great. He was very supportive. He was my shoulder to cry on many times in getting the first one off the ground. But in terms of the scale and how we operate, there's no true comparison in like our marketplace. So a lot of this stuff is we're kind of figuring it out as we go and making those mistakes and adjusting accordingly.
And now from a cash flow standpoint, like, are you I think we were talking about this, but you're like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars outlaid before the event.
The event, we are in excess of $3 million to run this event.
Like prior. So, and how much of that is before the event actually happens? Most of it.
That's the thing with events. Everything has to get paid in advance. Yeah. So events are a very ugly business model because you have to pay everybody up front, and most of your revenue, everybody's always the same, no matter what we do.
They book the last week.
They always book the last minute. Like 50% of our revenue comes in the last 3 weeks. So no matter what you do, that's just human nature. Yeah. So you have all this capital go out, and it has to sit there. And you have to weather these cash flow crunches. And then in the last 3 weeks, it's like, oh, we just sold 1,500 tickets in 3 weeks. Imagine that, right? So
it has its stresses. Like, so you've run 2 so far or 3?
Yeah, this is our 3rd year. Yeah.
This is your 3rd coming up.
Yeah.
Have you been profitable yet?
Yes. So our first year we broke even. And then last year we did okay, and then this year we'll be okay too.
You'll be better, hopefully a little bit better. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Dude, that's amazing. You profited. You broke even on your first year. That's like incredible. And then did it again.
Yeah, we did. Like but events, like it's ugly. It's an ugly model. It really is. And
so why do it is awkward. The obvious question. Why do it? And I know the answer here, but or at least I know what I would say. But go ahead.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of very selfish reasons, right? Like I was not happy with the level of education out there and the resources available in the marketplace, and I was frustrated when I was getting into multifamily. I thought everything out there was garbage, so I felt I could do a better job. So yeah, we're helping people that way. But for the selfish reasons, number one, I want to hang out with these cool people and it gives me the connections. And number two, talk about brand building. There's no better way to expand your brand than live events. There's no substitute. Like we could do podcast episodes all day long. You run a major event that brings in 3,000 people. No contest.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like it's just who would take your call, right? The amount of people who would take your call. Well, it's going to be a lot more than before you ran the event. And I remember hearing Kevin O'Leary say that, right? Now, that's what Kevin O'Leary said about being on TV. Yeah, go ahead.
Yep. Yeah, and not to mention now, like people are calling me. I'm not calling them, which is like a reversal of the way it is now too. So yeah, huge benefits, but like events are really, really, really hard. And that's why only a small percentage of people can run them well.
Yeah, you've got your work cut out for you, but it's really cool, man. It's a really cool story, and it's very impressive to say the least. So if people want to join or attend the conference this year, what should I tell them?
Yeah, well, they should use your special link to get their tickets. So if we don't have that yet, you can put that in the show notes.
Sure. Yeah, we'll put a special link there in the show notes for sure.
Yeah, and that's the best way. But if you're just interested in general real estate investing stuff, find me on YouTube. We have got hundreds of videos, youtube.com/Seth Ferguson.
Perfect. Well, Seth, thank you very much for doing this. It's great as always to connect with you, and hope we can make it a more regular thing.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the sun in Florida, even though it's kind of chilly because the weather here is gloomy.
It's gloomy. I can't handle that. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks.
Right. Thanks. And now a word from our sponsor, Control and Compound.
Infinite banking in under 60 seconds. We've all got to save our money somewhere, and we think that a high cash value life insurance policy is the perfect place to save it. Why? We're going to save our money inside this policy and it's going to grow tax-free. Down the road, we're going to get hit with an emergency or an opportunity, maybe a chance to buy a business, real estate property, an income producing asset. And instead of withdrawing from our savings account, we're going to leverage that asset. We're going to borrow the insurance company's money and we're going to invest in that opportunity. Our money is still inside of that policy, compounding, uninterrupted, tax-free, and our money's outside in this investment opportunity. We're going to rinse and repeat, all while providing a death benefit for our families. Down the road, we're going to retire. Now we retire with a high cash value life insurance policy with a lot of cash. We're going to start taking those policy loans again, but this time we're never going to pay them back. When I say never, I mean we're going to pay them back with the death benefit when we die, and our families are going to get left with the rest completely tax-free.
For more information, visit www.controllandcompound.com/Andrew Hines.